Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Bachmann have just released a new Thomas & Friends character and today we're going to take a look. It's been a little while since Bachmann last released a new Thomas & Friends character. I guess the last one was Daisy. But we've got a new one today, and that is, of course, Ryan. Based on the Great Northern N2 in this absolutely fantastic purple livery. Now this looks to me as though it's one of the most complex Bachmann Thomas & Friends locos there are. The livery is obviously very intricate, and there seems to be a fair few separately fitted details as well. However, that does seem to have come at a cost. The RRP for this loco is $199. That's a lot of pocket money, isn't it? Luckily though, I managed to get this from a retailer for a bit of a good discount. Train World, for instance, have this for $129.99, which is about £105. Still quite a lot of money though. We are now well over the £100 mark for this. So today we're going to take a close look at Ryan. We're going to see what he's like, check out the level of detail, look at the mechanism as well, see if improvements have been made there, and of course get him running and see what the performance is like. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bachmann have done with Ryan. I've seen a lot of photos, I've heard a lot of talk. Finally, let's take a look. Alright, so I'm really looking forward to this one because Ryan does seem to be quite an accurate representation of an N2, and I will bring in a model of an N2 once he's out so that you can see how similar they are. Anyway, same packaging as always. If I show you the back of the box, we can see that Ryan's eyes do move side to side like the rest of the range, so that's pretty awesome. And then of course you've got some of the other characters. I have videos, I believe, on all of these now, so check them out on the channel if you'd like to. For now though, let's get this out. And I think Bachmann's little heat sealing machine might need a bit of maintenance because mine is open on either side, which is good for me, yeah, good for getting them out, but obviously if the packaging is coming apart before customers have purchased the models, obviously that's not good. Okay, so there's Ryan in the little tray, and I have to say, I really like the extra detail that we've got with Ryan. Yeah, the range is definitely evolving. It certainly is. Evolving to be less like toys and more like models too. And in the prices, which obviously has good and bad in it. Let's have a look at the instructions. So the first sheet shows an exploded diagram, as you can see. And let's just have a quick look at the mechanism. Yeah, it does seem to be pretty much the same design as usual, doesn't it? Big chassis block with all of the gears in it for the eye mechanism. Can't quite tell what motor they're using here, but we will take a look later on. Apart from that, yeah, it doesn't reveal too much about the mechanism, other than that it looks quite similar to the rest of the range. And then what's this one? I think that's just a guarantee and limited warranty. Okay, so that's fine. Right, with that then, let's pull Ryan out of the tray and take a close look. Here we go. Do this nice and carefully. All right, so first of all, his face is loose. Oh my goodness. Well, that's a nice little surprise for the kiddies, isn't it? How lovely that is. Can I put this back on? Yeah, it does fit back on. All right, so there's no harm done. Right, well, the first thing that's clear is that the packaging that Bachmann use for this range is no longer suitable for these models, given how complex they are becoming in their livery. As you can see, the packaging has worn off the N on GNR there, which is really a pity. That is completely ruined, and that's where that little sort of nubbin on the packaging touches the letter there, and yeah, I can see a bit of paint on it actually. So yeah, that is really, really unfortunate for such an expensive model. Besides that though, yeah, the decoration does look fantastic. There's obviously quite a bit of complexity to it, and we'll look at that in just a second. And there does seem to be a lot of detail on this as well. Whether there's enough detail and complexity to warrant over £100 for this, I'm not entirely sure. Certainly this doesn't feel like a $200 locomotive, but I guess the range has always been quite expensive, so I'm not too surprised. Anyway, let me pull in a real N2, well, obviously still a model of an N2, but yeah, this is what Ryan is based on. As you can see, the N2 is larger, and that's because Ryan is HO scale, and my N2 is 00 scale, and you can see that the wheels are significantly different. Yeah, Ryan's been given much smaller wheels than the N2, and I think this kind of shows that Ryan's not that much of a faithful representation of the N2, but you can certainly tell at least that he's been based on that. Anyway, we'll have a much closer look at Ryan in just a second, but first of all, here's a little bit of background on his character and his basis. Ryan first appeared in Thomas & Friends, I believe, in Series 20, do correct me if I'm wrong, and he's quite a friendly engine who has been known to help Thomas, Toby and others on the island of Sodor. He often takes over from Thomas's work while Thomas is busy or being repaired. In fact, he loves doing as many extra jobs as he can, often helping out Toby and Daisy as well. Ryan dreams of being brave and heroic, but actually he's not that brave and he can be quite easily sent into a panic. Ryan is based on the Great Northern N2, as I've been saying, which was designed by Sir Nigel Gresley over 100 years ago. In real life, these engines were used on suburban passenger trains or even on the London Underground in some cases. 107 were built in total, although only one of them remains in existence today. So there he is, up close and personal for you, the all-new Ryan from Bachmann. And yeah, this one is really cool. He's super detailed, really quite nicely put together. The quality is also really good. Obviously, we've got the damage to the paint on the side of the tank, but that's really not a quality problem with the model, that's more a quality problem with the packaging. And frankly, I and a lot of others have been on about this packaging for years and years, and Bachmann have just ignored that and continued regardless, and stuff like this is what's going to happen as a result. Now, I would say if this happens to you and you've got models damaged by the packaging, it's really important that you return them to wherever you bought them from for a replacement or a refund, because it seems as though the only way we're going to get decent packaging out of Bachmann is if it starts hurting their bank account, so do bear that in mind. The weight of the loco is not very impressive, 140 grams, that is lighter than the DJM 1361, tiny little loco, and quite a bit lighter than the Rapido J70 as well. Obviously the body is mostly plastic, but that is what you'd expect for this sort of grade of loco. Let's start taking a closer look at the level of detail then. So the finish is awesome. Yeah, you've got that high gloss finish, which is pretty much constant across the entire Bachmann Thomas & Friends range. But I would say this loco has the most complex decoration of any of the Thomas & Friends locos I've ever looked at. You've got the lining on the boiler, which is relatively complex. It's kind of like triple lining. You've got the lining on the lettering on the water tanks and also on the sides of the cab. You've also got the black lining around loads and loads of different components. You've got the handrails picked out. The coal bunker is fully painted, the splashers are painted up as well with quite a lot of lining, and even the wheels and the axles are painted into the purple as well. A very complex paint job. Here's a look at Ryan's face. I would say looking at the pictures, the face is spot on. Yeah, it looks just like Ryan. And the same is true of the other details as well, even right down to the colour of the crank pins, which have a kind of brassy colour to them. That's consistent with the show, which is awesome. The only detail that this model doesn't have is glazing on the front windows, which is quite strange. It's strange because the rear windows are done completely different. The glazing here is just fully opaque, it's part of the moulding, but it isn't on the front, and that's just weird, isn't it? It does have glazing on the show, I believe. Let's take a look at some of the other details. So the buffer beams are very detailed. You don't have any screw link couplings with this, but it's got the lamp, the pipes, and also the lamp irons, which is really cool. You've got fully moulded pipework on the side of the boiler. Yeah, that's not separately fitted, but it looks okay. You have got this handrail on the top of the tank though, and that is a separately fitted piece, as is the pipework in front of the cab, which is really awesome. You've also got a separately painted whistle, which is just part of the moulding, but really well painted so that it looks good. We do have a physical cab space on this loco, well, sort of. It is physical in that you can see right through it, which is quite cool. Not the case with a lot of the Bachmann Thomas locos, but it's not a full cab. The floor of the cab is level with the top of the doors, so not entirely accurate, but better than a fully blocked in cab, I suppose. Right, well, we've got a coal load, as you can see, which looks pretty good. Yeah, decent level of detail to that. Separately fitted lamp on the back, as well as more buffer beam detail. And then you've got the standard sort of sprung Bachmann couplings, which are fixed in place, although the hooks can move around quite a bit. Oh, and I almost forgot, you've got the Ryan nameplates as well. They look like they should have more paint on them than that because they are just gold, but again, that is how they are on the show. So I would say this is easily the most detailed Bachmann Thomas & Friends loco I've looked at. The level of detail even better than before because of the handrails, which are now separately fitted and such, and obviously that decoration is really quite complex as well. So now let's get him down onto the track, let's give him his first test, and also let's have a look at that mechanism. So there is the new Bachmann Ryan, looking awesome. Yeah, I love him. I've already filmed the first performance test and I'll show you how that went in just a second. Next, I went on and did my disassembly to have a look at the mechanism, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So the quality of the mechanism, in my opinion, is really poor this time. I really think Bachmann cheaped out. We've seen them do better with the likes of Rosie, stuck in my mind as a good one. Yeah, for some reason, this really expensive loco has not got a quality mechanism. The rear pony is what I call a flapper. It's not sprung or anything. To be fair, it doesn't cause derailments. I have had it derail across points backwards at higher speeds, but apart from that, it is quite stable, but that's how that works. The base keeper plate is held on by a few screws, and removing this reveals that there are no proper bearings on the driving axles, and even worse than that, the axles sit into square slots cut into the chassis. That's a really poor quality feature. I've proven that proper bearings do reduce drag in a mechanism, and yet this one has just got square bearings. Not at all impressed by that. And some of the Bachmann Thomas locos do have bearings. I don't know why this new one doesn't. It does, however, have wiper pickups on all of its driving wheels. Not the rear pony truck, but yeah, the 6 drivers all have pickups, so that's okay. Body removal was a little bit difficult because, again, for some reason, Bachmann cheaped out and didn't include proper instructions with this loco, so I had to kind of figure it out as I went along. 4 screws on the base, and then there's a hidden screw in the top of the chimney, and before you can remove the body, you've got to pull out that eye mechanism. Anyway, with that out, the body can be removed from the chassis. And as you can see, we've got a die-cast chassis here, so this provides what little weight the model has. But it is a very bare bones chassis. It doesn't even have a DCC socket on board. In this day and age, that's a real omission for an expensive loco. People want to run stuff on DCC. This design makes that very difficult. And then here is the motor. This is a very cheap 3-pole, not a 5-pole motor. Hornby used this one quite a bit. It's known as the Type 7 motor. How cheap is this thing? Well, it's quite difficult to find a motor that is cheaper than this, that runs on 12 volts. Currently, you, the consumer, can buy one of these motors for £1.31. Is this really the kind of motor that should be used in a $200 locomotive? I don't think so. And during my testing, these motors do fail under load. And this loco is going to be quite a load because we've got no proper bearings, which I've proven extensively increases the drag. And then of course you've got the eye mechanism, which uses up even more energy. So it's really imperative that you keep this mechanism clean and lubricated, otherwise that motor is going to be overloaded. Poor choice of motor in my opinion. Why did they go for the cheapest one they could possibly find? And then in terms of the back-to-back gauging, it's pretty good. It comes in at 14.3 to 14.4, which is pretty much bang on the standard. So a poor quality mechanism in my opinion. They've really gone for the bare minimum here to get the loco running. Those cheap motors do run well, I'll give them that. Yeah, the performance on them is good. But like I say, I've had quite a few of that kind of motor fail quite prematurely, so that's one to watch out for. Anyway, the performance, in contrast with the mechanism, was pretty decent. So let me go back in time and show you how that went. Right, it is time for Ryan's first ever test. Big question, does he actually work? So, forwards direction on the controller. Let's give him some juice and see if he does. Here we go. Oh, yeah, he's starting off. Yeah, that was pretty good and smooth, wasn't it? I like that a lot. Are the eyes working? Yes, they're looking left and right. Not exactly a smooth motion though, seems to be getting stuck a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit weird. Hopefully that will loosen up the more he runs. How is the speed? This is 50% power. Yeah, so I would say about right. Quite on the speedy side, but I guess you want that. It's more fun that way. And what is he like at the slow speeds? Now, he's not running yet, and I will let him run for 30 minutes in either direction before drawing any conclusions about the performance. But straight out of the box, let's try a crawl, see how that goes. Oh, that's pretty good. I think that's pretty much all you could ask of a model like this, isn't it? Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a little bit jerky, tiny bit, but apart from that, it's absolutely awesome. And hey, it may even get less jerky as I run it in. Wow, that's really, really good. So at last we're getting some value here. Yeah, it's a relatively simple loco compared with, you know, the locos I normally look at. And yet still quite expensive. 100 quid, more than 100 quid. So I'm glad to see that the performance is like that of a 100 quid locomotive. That's really good. Right, forwards direction then. Let's get him running, and let's also see how he gets on around the various curves. Okay, here he goes. Second radius curves, yeah, absolutely fine. So no issues with that rear pony truck so far. And up Gordon's Hill, no slowing down. Really quite a lively runner, I'll have to say. On 50% on the controller, he's really, really going for it. And yet, it's not affected the slow speed performance. He can still crawl really, really well. And once he's running, I will test the torque as well, just to check that he's not too weak, but I don't think he's going to be. Yeah, seems to be a really, really solid runner. So I'll let Ryan run in fully, and when that's done, I'll come back and we'll continue with the review. Alright, see you in just a second. Okay folks, that is running in complete. Yes, Ryan's fully run in. The eyes are still sticking, I will say that. Yeah, in the forwards direction, the eyes stick. Again, that freaks me out a little bit because any extra strain on that motor is not going to be good news. But yeah, to be fair, he's working very, very well. Let's have a look at the crawl again, just because it was so impressive. And yeah, that Type 7 motor that Hornby used, it is good for a crawl. It's only a 3-pole motor, but it does well. There you go. I don't know, I'm just thinking about all those gears for the eye mechanism and the square bearings and the puny Type 7 motor running it all. Yikes, why did they do that? Now, I'm going to do the torque test, but I'll warn you, I'm not going to do it for long because I'm serious about not overloading that motor. I don't want it to blow up. You know that 14XX I had from Hornby that blew up, almost set itself on fire? That was one of those. Yeah, so it's got enough to torque to turn its wheels, but they do slow down quite dramatically. The loco is obviously a light one, as I said, 140 grams, and that makes the tractive effort quite low as well, 0.16 newtons, which is only around 13 coaches on straight and level track. I've got quite a few smaller locos than this, in fact, that are better haulers than Ryan is. But I have set up some Great Northern coaches, which is a pleasure to be able to do, because obviously Ryan is a Great Northern loco. So let's back him up, and let's see how he gets on. Good luck, Ryan. Right, let's try a gentle coupling. Of course, these locos do use non-standard couplings. I just don't quite understand why, really. Yeah, it does mean that you've got a slight difference between these couplings and the couplings on most 00 rolling stock. But that has coupled perfectly, so that's good. Right, can he haul the coaches? Let's have a look. Let's go for about 40 speed. Here we go. Take off gently. And then on the middle line, only right that I run this loco really, this is the Hornby N2, which is a really old model, but much better motor in this one, has to be said. Nice 5-pole motor, lots of grunt to it, much heavier as well, at nearly 100 grams more actually. But obviously this is not Ryan, and Ryan is a bit different in that he's supposed to be sort of a toy. I hesitate to call them toys now because of how expensive they are, but they have to be suitable for an 8-year-old, let's put it that way. And the N2, not so much. And then on the inside line, I've got the man himself. Always like to give Thomas a bit of a run, so here he comes. And I've got quite a few other tank engines from Thomas in the sidings, so see which other ones you can spot. Anyway, let's catch up with Ryan, see how he gets on up Gordon's Hill. Right, I'll be interested to see how he gets on around the curves with a bit of a load. And the answer is, yeah, he slows down quite a lot, which is obviously not a surprise because it's a high drag mechanism with no proper bearings and a very cheap motor. Away from the curves though, he is performing really nicely, I have to say. And as you can see, he is heavy enough to haul these 4 Great Northern coaches, which is also good to see. I think Bachmann have done a fantastic job of modelling Ryan here. I mean, it looks just like the show's character, it really does. And it feels like every new character Bachmann releases gets even closer every time to the TV show character. So that's really impressive. The performance is good, I will say that. Yeah, it does run very well, which is great to see. My main concerns with this really are the high asking price. Not sure why this needs to be quite as expensive, given how relatively basic it is, particularly mechanically. And again, yeah, that mechanism, which is not very good. But he's enjoyable to use, he looks marvellous. Yeah, that livery is just top notch, incredibly well done. And a very welcome addition to the collection. So yeah, well done Bachmann. And now some ratings then for the all-new Bachmann Ryan. Do bear in mind this rating system is designed for proper models and not so much Thomas stuff, so maybe it's a little unfair to put Ryan through this. But the level of detail I have rated in terms of how accurate the loco looks to the character on the show, which I think is really good. I've given it 4 star. I think the paintwork is spot on. I would have said the face looks really good as well. Nice accurate face. Lots and lots of detail on this. The only thing that really lets it down is the lack of glazing on the front windows. That caught my eye quite easily. Lack of proper cab. Again, yeah, the cab space not very realistic. And it doesn't have the screw-link couplings. I know none of the Thomas characters have had that, but that would have been a cool extra. Other than that though, yeah, really good level of detail. As much as I think they cheaped out on the mechanism in this loco, the performance itself is absolutely awesome, although obviously you will have to do a bit of work to keep it that way. Yeah, the crawl, fantastic, really good crawl, good speed to it, the eye mechanism works pretty well, and he doesn't cut out or anything like that thanks to all of the pickups on the driving wheels. Yeah, I'm not going to fault the performance, that was really good. The pulling power, due to the lightweight, is not fantastic. Again, this is less than a Rapido J70, 13 coaches or 0.16 newtons. Yeah, quite lightweight this loco. The mechanism is one of the categories that really lets this loco down. No proper bearings on the driving axles, square slots for the axles to sit in, really cheap and nasty feature. No DC-C socket, unfortunately, cheap 3-pole motor, no flywheel. Not a lot to celebrate here with the mechanism. It is relatively accessible so that you can do your good clean and lubrication, I suppose, which is important given the propensity of this motor to overload and sort of go nuclear, as I've had happen a couple of times. So yeah, at least it's good and accessible. Quality then, I've given 4 star. Yeah, generally the loco quality is absolutely fine. It is plastic in its construction, but that makes sense for a model of this kind, so I'm not going to criticise it for that too much. It's really the packaging that lets this down. Yeah, you've got parts of the packaging rubbing off some of the paintwork. I think it's time this packaging went and they came up with a better solution for packaging a $200 locomotive at RRP. And that brings us on to the value for money then. $199 is the RRP. Not sure how many retailers do sell at that price, and if they did, that would be a 1 star in my opinion, a complete rip-off. The price I paid, $129.99 or £105, a great discount there from Train World, but it's still a lot of money for what is a very basic model in the grand scheme of things, with a poor mechanism to boot. So I've given it 2 star on balance. Why are these so expensive? That's a real shame. Overall then, that is 6.85 out of 10, or a grade of E. Yeah, it's a great model in the sense that it looks good, it's just the mechanism and of course the price that really lets this down. Into the logbook he goes, and he's in 12th place above my 552 that I 3D printed and below the Triang Victorian set. Yeah, overall I can recommend this if you don't mind the price and the fact that a bit of maintenance is going to be quite necessary with this one due to the relatively low quality mechanism. Well folks, that will just about do it for yet another Bachmann Thomas & Friends loco review. Please do comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you think the price and the mechanism are an issue, or do you not care too much? I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. For now though, thank you again for watching, and I will see you very, very soon for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.